Okay, part F of the TIA series of videos. Congratulations for making it this far. It's the one you've all been waiting for, traffic assignment. Here we go. So, where we've got to so far, we've generated the traffic, we've distributed the traffic, and now we're actually going to assign it to the road network. Here we go. So in the last video, I got you as far as distribution and into assignment. We now know what percentage of our traffic is going to go on what streets to get into our study area. And now we're really trying to figure out, who's going to go left, who's going to go through, and how much extra traffic is going to be added to specific movements on the traffic network. So remember we did the site trip generation. So we have, X number of primary trips, pass-by trips, and all this sort of stuff for our site. We did that a while back. And basically, it's just a matter of figuring it out and going, well, if there's 50% of our total trips are coming in on College Street and, we have a total number of trips. Inbound is 125 primary trips, so then we're going to have to, add 50% of that to College Street. So unfortunately, I don't have the same lovely graphics as this for the Bathurst example, but here's an example from somewhere else, and you can basically see that we've just gone through manually and added, 5 trips here, 5 trips there to the various bits of the network based on getting our traffic from the outside the big box and then into our site. And the net result is you end up with something like this. So here we go, site traffic volumes. There's a lovely figure for our Bathurst site, which actually tells us how many vehicles are going to be making what movements at what time. And you can see how that sort of fits with the large box traffic distribution, because we have 15% of our outbound traffic in the PM, which isn't a very large number of outbound trips. That 5 is 15%, and that's going left, southbound left there, whereas our 35%, 50 trips are going south there. So you can see how the numbers should all add up perfectly. Strangely enough, they don't actually, so maybe somewhere in amongst here I have used the wrong graphic or I've used the wrong thing, but you get the basic idea. Again, oh, look at this, there's something weird going on here. It looks like there's been an error in some typographical thing. That should be 10% and that should be 0%. So yes, errors get made, either typographical or in spreadsheets. It happens, but the nice thing is, for the most part, we're working with small numbers of trips, and so 5 vehicles an hour here or there. That's 1 vehicle every, what is that? 5 vehicles an hour into 60. Oh, it's getting tiring. Anyway, it's not very many trips. 1 every 12 minutes. That's really not going to have a huge impact. So by the time you spread this very large number of trips that we had, where are we? There's 125 new trips on the network. And by the time you spread it out on the network, it's not all that many, is it? So quite often there is this big, huge fear that 120 new trips on the network is going to suddenly change the environment. But when you start thinking about that, that's 120 trips in an hour, new trips. That means 2 trips every minute. 1 trip every 30 seconds. Would you notice if there was an extra vehicle every 30 seconds on your street? Probably not. So quite often the impacts that we have are quite small. But then again, if you're doing a traffic impact statement for like an entire district, say, the Docklands in Melbourne or some other very large thing, we're then starting to talk up in the thousands of vehicles an hour. And we get, quite significant impacts. Remember, a traffic lane in urban conditions can carry somewhere in the order of 900 vehicles an hour by the time you consider the fact that it's the traffic lights that take up all the time, that are the constraint on your capacity. And so, 900 vehicles an hour is quite a lot of traffic, really, a whole lane of traffic. So, but you've got to sort of have a bit of a thought about the context and how big the impacts are, and often it does sort of help to look at these numbers in an objective way of, does that sound reasonable? Does it sound reasonable that a new supermarket at 8:30 in the morning in this particular neighborhood is going to only generate 10 more trips going outbound. That sounds pretty reasonable to me because, hey, no one shops at 8:30 in the morning. Well, hardly anyone does. Whereas, peak hour in the afternoon, 55 trips outbound, 160 inbound. Yeah, that sort of makes sense to me. A supermarket is going to generate a whole load of more trips, and we'd compare that with the number of parking spaces we'd provide. Are you sort of expecting that, yeah, the parking spaces will turn over once every half hour? So, 80 parking spaces might be 160 trips inbound in an hour. That sort of does make sense. But, always think above the numbers and think about, does this reality check with what I'd expect? You can do all this data analysis, but if you've fundamentally made a bad assumption at the start, you might be out by a factor of 2 or something like that. Anyway, onwards to the next slideshow where we'll start talking about pass by trips, finally.